Hey everyone, it's Sergeant Rajan with the Uniform Recruitment Unit, and I want to welcome each and every one of you to another session of our Ask Me Anything. And thank you for taking the time to join me today. We're going to go over a lot of topics, specifically in relation to the auxiliary program. And, before I go on to all the things that we're talking about, I certainly want to talk about our guest here today. But I also want to give kudos to the Toronto Blue Jays for knocking it out of the park last night. But we'll talk about that later on. But today, I have the pleasure of welcoming my guest, Acting Staff Sergeant Matthew Manner from East Region. He oversees some of the portfolio for the auxiliary program in his region. And maybe Matthew, like I said, welcome. Thank you for joining me today, taking the time out. But maybe a quick intro about you, Matthew. I know there's a few points that I know about you we'll talk about later, which is pretty cool actually. But why don't you give our guests a quick intro about who you are and your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here and talk about the phenomenal program that's the auxiliary program with the OPP. So yeah, my name's Matthew Manor. I'm currently in an acting staff sergeant role. I'm in a temporary assignment with the program office based at a GHQ, just trying to help with some of our recruitment activities. But I operate out of the East Region. Like you said, I'm a member of the Frontenac unit here in East Region. I got onto the OPP auxiliary program back in April of 23. So I've been involved in the program for a few years now. Had the great privilege and honor to meet a number of people in uniform and on the auxiliary side. And I'm just happy to be here to talk about the program today and answer any questions that I can.
So as you'll see throughout the next hour as we're with you, you'll be able to interact with us. So you'll be able to kind of ask questions about anything that you want to know about the auxiliary program, or essentially have Matthew even address some of those questions. And we're going to do our best to address what the auxiliary program is, what sort of benefits you get from being in that program, what sort of experience you get. And certainly, if you're eventually looking to get on the uniform side to be a constable or even any other position, how this program can benefit you. So we will try and address all that. And if you have especially questions about that, please put that on the chat. Because if you're probably thinking about it, there's probably others in our session today that are probably thinking about the same thing. So Matthew, the first one I'll just ask you yourself personally, I know we were talking about it before we came on the air here. Why did you choose to join the auxiliary program? Maybe give us a bit of reasoning or context behind that for you.
Yeah, sure. So like a lot of people, I imagine, have some sort of interest in law enforcement, or perhaps just getting involved in their community to figure out how they can, make the community a bit better for everybody. I, way back when in a previous life, probably wanted to be a police officer, and actually thought about applying to the auxiliary program a number of years ago when I was when I was a young person just coming out of school. But I had been working with a colleague in my regular life outside of law enforcement who made the shift from auxiliary to uniform policing. He had been working just not too far from us in Napanee in the LNA region. And he invited me out one day. He said, "Hey, I think you'd be a really great fit and a great candidate for the auxiliary program. I know you have an interest in the work that we're doing. Why don't you come with me for a ride along? I'll show you what it's all about." So scheduled the time, went and met him, spent the day, met all kinds of amazing people at the detachment, hopped in the vehicle, and we went to work for the day. And I was immediately hooked. After spending a 10-hour shift working with the folks there in LNA, my question was, how do I apply? How do I get started? I had to get involved somehow. I saw the benefits and the opportunities. And so I started working on my application, got everything together, submitted it. And now a number of years, I guess 4.5 years later, here I am sitting here chatting with you as a member of the auxiliary program.
That's awesome. And you know what, Matthew, obviously it's been 3 years since you went through the application process. And as you know, even whether it's a constable side or even the auxiliary side, the qualifications, the minimum requirements change, regularly. Maybe you can address what the minimum qualifications are to apply for the auxiliary program. Certainly, maybe if you want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So our requirements are similar. The process is very aligned with the uniform recruitment side now, which is great. Minimum requirements, you have to be at least 18 years of age to apply. You need to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, which is also a requirement. You need to have your Ontario secondary school diploma or equivalent. A college and university degree also helps and is applicable. You also have to have a valid G driver's license with full privileges. No criminal record, And you have to be able to successfully get through the application process, which of course has a number of steps, including a background check, medical testing, psychological tests, and a few other things, especially your character references, which is a big one I know on the uniform side as well with us.
Yeah, and you know what, Matthew, you're bang on with everything because I was just checking off things as you were talking. So you've clearly had all of it covered. I'll just add a few things. I know we get this question on the uniform side all the time. You know, if you're an applicant from out of province, or sorry, not out of province, but out of country, one of the things that you can do is essentially go to get your education assessed for Ontario standards, provincial standards. So you can do that through WES. Again, if you go on our website, we have that information for you. And like Matthew said, you would need your G license, and it has to be no more than 6 demerit points. If you have demerit points, that's fine, but it just has to not be more than 6 in total. And, you know, as you go through the final stages of the hiring process, you know, you would be required to pass a medical, psychological, security, and financial testing, checks, and a thorough character and background investigation for it. So that's essentially what the minimum requirements are for you to apply for the auxiliary program. I see people are jumping in here. We're getting the messages through. Somebody from Finland saying hello there. So thank you for joining us on the session. So maybe even going a bit further, Matthew, and talking about the application process. So how does that process work? Maybe you can start off with a little bit on what that is, and then I'll certainly add more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 quick things I can perhaps mention as well. So we no longer have a prerequisite requirement for your first aid. So that's something we're going to teach you when you go through our recruitment training process. So that's an important one. And people always ask us about the physical requirements. Do I have to do the prep test or have a PIN test, et cetera? So for us, you still need to be able to do your duties. You have to have enough physical capability to do your duties, but there's no test. You don't have to pass the test during the auxiliary. So just 2 other sort of items that I'd mentioned in terms of that. So the process itself, again, it's great. So today, as you said, things have changed a bit from historic times. We're a bit more aligned with the uniform recruitment process, which is great because obviously if you're thinking about moving on to the uniform side eventually, you'll be very familiar with the application process. It'll seem very familiar to you, which is great. So obviously you want to make sure you meet all the eligibility requirements that we just talked about. You want to create and submit your application. So if you hit the website, opp.ca/auxiliary, there's a bunch of information on that page. And of course, we have a link to the application portal there. It's all done online. It's very straightforward. We used to make you fill out a bunch of PDFs and try and compile them. It was very complicated. We don't have that anymore. It's a lot easier for folks now to complete. Once you've submitted your application, there's going to be a pre-screening. And if you make it through that step, you're going to get to the interview phase. It's an online interview with somebody from Uniform Recruitment. They're going to spend some time chatting with you about your application, your history, your background, and your interests, why you want to apply and participate. If you make it through that step, you're going to end up in a queue for the psychological evaluation. You're going to do your psych testing, which is an important piece. And then once you pass that, you're going to move on to the background stage, which includes the submission of a number of documents. This is where that medical evaluation you talked about comes in, your security check, your financial check, and those references. So your employment references, your character references, and your learning references. So that's when we get a question about a lot of the time, like, what if I've been out of school for a while? So the idea here is that it doesn't have to be a teacher. It needs to be somebody who can speak to your ability to learn, right? So you're going to be taking on a whole bunch of new skills and a bunch of new knowledge. Somebody who can say, hey, I work with Matthew in his regular job, and he's always attending training, he's doing courses, etc. So when we talk about a learning reference for us, we want to make sure it's somebody who can sort of validate your ability to continue to learn and improve. So you make it through that step. Sorry, I'm almost done, right? You're going to hit your final assessment.
That's perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
You're going to hit your final assessment, right? Somebody's going to look over your file and approve it. And from there, you get that exciting email or perhaps phone call from somebody telling you that you've been accepted, and you're going to join a slot in the next training class, and you're going to get to come to Aurelia, where we're going to take you for 8 days and teach you all kinds of amazing things. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. And I know it was a lot.
Yeah, no, Matthew, I think you hit on everything actually from A to Z. And for members that are interested in the auxiliary program, please go on to opp.ca/careers. And if you scroll down all the way, you'll see there's an auxiliary banner there, and you can see everything from the roles and the responsibilities. And again, we will touch on that going forward. But again, it kind of breaks down what the steps are, what the minimum qualifications are. Again, if you're interested in the program, certainly make sure that you meet the minimum requirements before you submit the application, because if you don't meet the minimum requirements, certainly that will put a delay in you going through the process, or certainly your application being rejected. So make sure you look over that, read over it, and certainly we have the frequently asked questions that you can refer to. That will also help. But yeah, no, Matthew, I think you went over all 8 steps of what the process looks like. A question here that I just saw, and maybe we'll address it. I initially applied for the auxiliary position with the OPP and completed all the required steps. The last part was the psychological testing, and after that I was told I should receive a phone call within 2 weeks. However, it's been almost 2 months now. Do you know what's causing the delay and when I might expect the feedback from a recruiter? So based on my experience, what happens is the psych testing, even though you might have completed it right away, maybe a couple of months ago, again, it's like a conveyor belt of applications that we process and assess, right? So the psychological team has a lot of applications they work through. So I would say, one, please email us and ask for an update on the file. And second, patience. Patience is the key when it comes to some of these things, because there's a lot of files, not only on the auxiliary side, but certainly on the other streams that we're hiring for. So cadet, special constables, constable, experienced police officers. So there's a lot of streams that are simultaneously being hired for, and all this is being processed by our psychological team. And so certainly there are some slow paces that go through. So just be patient. But what I would suggest, Alan, is just to email us and ask for an update on your file, and we'll certainly be able to provide that for you. Anything to add on that, Matthew?
No, very similar, right? So we get inquiries from folks, especially being a recruitment ambassador for the program. We get inquiries from folks all the time. You're excited, you've submitted everything, you're waiting to hear, right? I understand, but patience is the key. Then we try to impart that upon people who are asking for updates, because sometimes it just takes a little bit longer than others.
And the question here by Oren, I think Matthew actually touched on it in the last point. Whether you're applying for the constable position or even the auxiliary position, yes, we ask for educational references. And the question is, for the OPP, they require 3 educational references, but I graduated 5 years ago. Can I opt out of providing them? So you won't be able to opt out of providing the references, but I think Matthew touched on how you can talk about the educational references. Maybe you can talk about that, Matthew. If it's essentially, away from timeline.
Yeah, for sure. So again, this happens. We have folks from all different walks of life and levels of experience and age applying for the auxiliary program specifically. So some of us have been out of formal school for a while, and that's fine. If you keep in touch with old professors or teachers, and they're still, they understand your character and your ability to learn and can speak to that, great. But you can always find somebody else. Maybe you have a hobby. Maybe there's some hobby that's applicable, and you work with somebody, or you have that hobby with somebody, again, who can talk about who you are and your, how you react when you're in a learning environment or a different environment, and your ability to consume information and learn new skills. That's really the key aspect, especially for us. We want somebody who can really say, yes, I know this person, and here's some examples of them trying something new and learning that skill, and perhaps getting better at it or more proficient. That's the key for us, recognizing that most people coming to the auxiliary program have no experience or background in law enforcement, and we're going to give you a lot of new information and a lot of new skills that you need to learn. So it's really important that you're able to have someone that can speak to your ability to continuously learn and improve.
Perfect. So I also see a few people are joining in as we're speaking here. And right now we're focusing on specifically the auxiliary program, the parameters for the auxiliary program, the minimum qualifications, the hiring stages. We haven't gone into the constable program yet. So we're mainly focusing on the requirements for auxiliary, which is a bit different for from the constable side. So Matthew, you probably get this all the time. What do auxiliary officers do? That's probably a question that we get all the time. So maybe you can elaborate on exactly what the roles and responsibilities are as an auxiliary officer.
Yeah, sure. So that's a huge question. So auxiliaries do a lot. There's a lot of different roles and responsibilities that we are asked and are required to fill in with the OPP. So first and foremost, we're volunteers. We don't get paid for our time. The thing that really unites auxiliary members together is our interest and willing to contribute to the community and make
Well
our
said.
communities better, right?
Well
So
said.
that's
Yep.
kind of the most important pieces, that we're volunteers.
Yep.
One of the greatest aspects of the program is we get to work shoulder to shoulder with our uniformed colleagues in a variety of capacities. So that could be in a patrol capacity. Perhaps there's a time where the shift needs some extra support, and you go out and you're riding with a uniform member, and you're providing them with support in all kinds of their regular duties. The idea is to volunteer your time to help support whatever they might have going on. You could end up at an MVC at a scene and helping them with traffic, or providing first aid, or coordinating with the comm center. There's a variety of opportunities as a volunteer. But then the other big one is around community safety. So we do a lot of things related to community safety. We participate in a lot of education programs. We have a variety of programs that we deliver. Things like the door-to-door campaign, for example, the Lock It or Lose It campaign, those types of things. So those are auxiliary program initiatives that are led by auxiliary members. And then we also provide support at community events. So there's a variety of community events that occur across the province that our uniformed colleagues just aren't able to participate in for whatever reason. So we may have a presence at your local fair or your local market or those kinds of things. Providing support during parade season is another huge one where communities want to have their parades and celebrate different things. Auxiliary members are there, ready to help support those activities. So there's a whole variety of roles that the auxiliary program fills, and does it in a supporting fashion with our uniformed colleagues.
Yeah, and I know the auxiliary program has been in existence for like the past 65 years with the OPP, and it's a cornerstone of essentially public safety and supporting public safety in conjunction with uniformed members. I know we have about 500 auxiliary members throughout the province. And I was just looking at the stat, which is actually really eye-opening. In 2024, the amount of man hours that the auxiliary program committed to various communities across the province, 120,000 man hours, which is a lot, when you really break it down in terms of all the different type of things which you touched upon, Matthew. And maybe you can talk about the award that was best given to the auxiliary program, I think a couple of weeks ago at the International Associations of Chiefs of Police. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it was really great and exciting news. Two of our two auxiliary superintendents attended the ceremony down in the United States in Colorado, I believe. And it's the International Association of Chiefs of Police. So it's an international body. They participate in a variety of things, and one of them is looking at and recognizing volunteer policing programs around the world. And we were honored with the distinction of being one of the best volunteer policing organizations in the world. So it was a pretty substantial and significant award. Very proud of the program that we have. And you talked about our 65-year history, and it has been a long history and definitely has evolved to where we are today, and provides a lot of support through the hours that we contribute to, like I said, a variety of the programs and roles that we fill for our communities, but also for the Ontario Provincial Police.
And I know you touched on it a little bit, but essentially the auxiliary program, because we get that question all the time, they provide like critical support for frontline policing, assist during emergencies, engage in proactive crime prevention initiatives, which is like the Lock It or Lose It initiative that you have through the auxiliary program. And when I talked about the countless man hours that they provide to community service or community initiatives, again, it goes a long way to supplement and help uniform members as they are doing their job across the province. And there's a question here that I just saw come through. How can a student looking to get into the auxiliary program make themselves competitive? What can you say to that, Matthew?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. So one of the things that we look at from an auxiliary standpoint, obviously there are a lot of requirements or things we want to look at in terms of your interests of why you want to be involved. But we look at a lot of transferable skills as well. So we have a variety of people that come from a variety of backgrounds. Some of us, or I shouldn't say some of us, because not me specifically, but a number of people who come to the auxiliary program would like to get involved and be involved at some higher level and become a uniformed constable at some point in time. But some of us are quite happy just volunteering. We have our other vocations. One of the things as a student is talk about some of the other things that you have involved in your life and what you may be bringing to the program. The diversity that we have in the auxiliary program really adds a richness, and that definitely makes you competitive versus someone who's just putting their hands up to say, well, I'm here because I want to use this as a stepping stone to become
Right.
a uniform constable, that's great. But if you want to differentiate yourself, maybe you have some skills and ability. Take myself, for example. My regular vocation, I had some skills and abilities that were very applicable and that the OPP was interested in and gave me some opportunities to be a bit more competitive in my application process. So I would say if there's some of those things that you can highlight in your application process, especially during your interview stage, that's probably a really good thing.
And you know what, just adding to that, so I know you mentioned you're a student, just make sure you meet the minimum requirements because you need to be 18 and over to apply to this position. So certainly, you know, if you're in high school, it might be a challenge for you because you might not meet the age requirement, but certainly if you're in post-secondary studies, I think certainly this is a great opportunity for you to do while you're in school, if you're able to manage your schooling there to eventually get into policing if that's what you're interested in. So one quick touch point here. I know we are hosting our in-person auxiliary info sessions in London, Ontario. At the London regional headquarters, the OPP regional headquarters in London, on November 20th and November 22nd. The 20th will be from 7 to 9 p.m. And on the 22nd, it will be from 12 to 2 p.m. So if this is something that you're interested in, if you're in the area, please join. Please come by. It'll be a very informative session for you to understand what this program is. You'll be able to meet auxiliary ambassadors that can answer the questions about whether it's application, the interview, how to prep for it. So again, these are things that will benefit you if you're going through the process. And the other thing I want to talk to you about, Matthew, which kind of triggered a thought, once you are hired as an auxiliary officer, I know there's our commitments, training. What does that look like? What does that look once you are accepted into the program? Maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great point, Prash, because we do get this question from time to time about what's the commitment? What are my minimum requirements? So we do have some. There are minimum expectations. So for our new members who are joining, so first of all, once you pass and get through your 8 days of training in Aurelia, which we make every effort to make sure everyone gets through. Once you do and you graduate, you get to stand on stage. You receive your auxiliary constable badge. It's a really great day. And then you move on to your unit, wherever you're being stationed close to home. And we tell graduates of the program that although your training and your time with your recruit colleagues is ending, your journey with the OPP auxiliary program is actually just beginning. It's just the start.
Right.
So once you get to your unit, you're going to get some familiarization with your unit, the structure, the facility, the people. And you're going to move on to talking about your minimum requirements. So for members across the province, every year, the minimum requirement for auxiliary members, you need to do your 6 hours minimum of training per month. Typically for most units, that's broken up into 2 separate meetings for about 3 hours. And that runs for 10 months of the year. So those are your 60 hours for training. And then you're also required to do a minimum of 10 hours of regular patrol support or community engagement activities. It can be either or a mixture of both, whatever works for you. So that's going to give you your 120 hours of community involvement for your total of 180 hours per year. So for some folks, that maybe sounds like a lot, but in terms of how you might spend some of your personal or your leisure time, we recognize we're asking people for one of their most valuable commodities, their time.
Right.
But it's actually not that arduous and it's not that difficult to meet that minimum requirement. Having said that, we do have members who routinely on a regular basis every year meet a 500, 600, 700, 800 hour commitment. Some of us have full-time jobs and it's just not attainable to do that much. But for other folks who maybe are retired, in school, in a transitional point in their career, it's actually not that hard for people to meet that minimum requirement and go above and beyond. We also have a minimum requirement that once you're on and you're trained, we ask you for at least 2 years of commitment. So, if you get on and you find maybe it's just not for you, or there's something else you'd like to do with your time, we still ask you to commit at least 2 years before you provide your resignation papers and decide to move on to something else. So those are kind of the minimum requirements in terms of training and your commitment for your community service.
That's perfect. And you know what? We, as obviously the recruitment for other areas of hiring that we focus on, we rely on you and your team regularly. So, in my personal experience, when we're doing either shuttle run events or information sessions, or, for all the outreach events that we go to, whether big scale or small scale, like when I think about big scale, we're talking about sporting events. In Ottawa, we did the NHL games. We did other outreach events at the auto show in Toronto. the women's event coming up in Toronto. So for all these major events, we heavily rely on members from your unit, and having them there and having them engage with the community, and whether it's children or adults or the elderly, I think it really does add a good balance and mix. And I've seen that in person, and the type of engagement and the feedback that I get. So it is a huge benefit that I find personally, even through my experience as an officer, when I have auxiliaries join me at these events. So certainly, I think it speaks to some of the things that you were talking about this program and how it benefits not only the organization but also the community at large. So no, that's great. Question here from Ryan. How long does it take from the time you apply to get contacted for the process or from the application? So I'm not sure if you want to take that. I can answer it too, Matthew. Let me know.
Sure. Well, I can tell you what I know. So our application process is now very aligned with uniform recruitment, and our timelines are the same as theirs. So Prash mentioned earlier that there's a number of different streams people can be applying through. And I think my understanding is our teams and the uniform recruitment side are very busy. So the timeline can vary. And I understand it also has to do with, Prash, you touched on this as well, the completeness of your application. So if your application is fully complete and competitive, you're probably looking at a shorter window of time before you hear, rather than somebody who they need to send this back to you because it's not complete. But maybe you have some more detailed information you can share.
No, that's perfect. And you're absolutely bang on there. So from application submission to job offer could be anywhere between 4 to 6 months, depending on the application. Again, there's so many factors that go into each of the application. So some applications might go through the whole process without a hitch or any sort of backup or follow-up that's required. But say if your application is incomplete or there's a lot of follow-up that needs to be done, certainly your application will be returned. That's so I really harp on the fact that before you submit the application, please make sure that you have reviewed it, read it, or have somebody else preview it, because it kind of takes away all this back and forth of small errors that you might catch yourself in. Again, the portal itself online is very user-friendly. So it will tell you when something is missing or wrong, so you'll be able to fix it. But again, make sure you read all the information and make sure it's all fixed before you hit that submit button, because you don't want any delays in the process. So no, absolutely, that's really, really good. Matthew, if I can ask you, obviously you've been an auxiliary officer, you're sergeant, you're currently the acting staff sergeant for the unit. When you look back on some of the events, whether it's community service events or assisting with uniform members at different things that's been asked of you, is there any one specific situation or an event that kind of stands out to you where you can, kind of speak to or share that, it made you feel like, man, this is exactly the reason why I joined this unit or this position, So maybe you can think about something that's kind of standing out to you about that.
Yeah, I mean, so perhaps I can offer two, and it's two because they're two different aspects. So the first that I'll mention, and you touched on this a little bit earlier. So one is that community involvement and community engagement aspect. So I definitely joined the auxiliary because I thought what a great opportunity to help support frontline officers and get involved in that sort of aspect of law enforcement. What I didn't bargain for was how much I would really enjoy the community engagement. So being at a community affair, touch a truck event, parade, and having the chance to have a positive interaction, especially with kids. We get lots of kids who come up and they want to take a picture. Sometimes we have junior constable badges that we give out at different events, those kinds of things. The real sort of validation and that opportunity and privilege to have a really positive impact with somebody. When I went to my first community event, it really struck me. I was really surprised at how what a great opportunity. There was some great validation that came out of it in terms of like really making a contribution and representing the OPP, which was great, right? People were coming up and saying, thank you for the work that you're doing and keeping our community safe and those kinds of things. So, that my first community event, like I said, it surprised me. It was something I hadn't really thought about or bargained for. But has been a really positive thing for me. Right. Now I seek those opportunities out because I know how great they are, not just for the organization, but for me and the community. And then the other probably would be more related to that ability to help support the frontline officers. So we do talk about this. It is an opportunity we have. Obviously, as you go through I'm still early on, but as you go through your auxiliary career, you need to spend some time and invest some time developing that rapport with the uniformed officers so they can get to trust you a little bit and they'll ask more of you as that relationship develops. And I can remember it was actually just in my first year. We had been doing some events around this time of year at Halloween. It was a really positive experience. The shift was going well. We went back to the detachment to have a bit of a break and something to eat later on in the evening. And I was getting ready to call it quits for the evening and call it a day. And at that time, a motor vehicle accident call came in, and the uniform member that I was riding with was sitting across the table. She started to put her kit back on right away and get ready to head right out the door right away, because obviously it was a very urgent call.
Right.
And there was no expectation that I would go with her. There was none at that time. But I, in that moment, realized, wait a minute, that's why I'm here. That's why I volunteered. That's why I made the commitment and went through the process. So I pulled my gear on, jumped in the vehicle, and off we went. And I was able to provide quite a bit of support through that call that had nothing to do with the community service event that we were doing before. And that stuck with me as a reminder of, when I'm here, even if I'm not asked, the officers' interest in having us participate and support them in their work. If there's small aspects of things that we can do during the day that A, provide a bit of levity, but B, make things a bit more seamless in terms of their work, or remind them of things. Just that great opportunity to work with somebody and really be treated as a partner and an equal. That just stood out to me as an amazing thing to be able to help and contribute in that sort of fashion. So those are kind of two of the things that really in this early stage stick out for me and really keep me grounded when I'm out.
No, that's great examples that you shared. Kind of articulates what this position is all about. And Matthew, I know there's a lot of officers that report to you directly and through your role in your position. Do you see a lot of auxiliary officers use this as a stepping stone? And you probably see progression where they come in as a brand new auxiliary officer. You see growth, you see maturity, you see experience, and then you yourself might have approached your members and say, hey, listen, I see what you have to offer, and I think you'd be a great fit for the next. Like, do you see that happening? Have you done that? Maybe you can kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. Obviously, we get asked a lot about, can I get on with the auxiliary, and will that help me in terms of moving on to become a uniform member with the Ontario Provincial Police? So the answer is yes. So historically, I think my understanding is there was a little bit of apprehension about that for folks for whatever reasons. That's not the case anymore. We absolutely see our program as a way to get people more familiar with the organization, the Ontario Provincial Police, and law enforcement in general, and get a firsthand look at what becoming a police officer may look like or can look like. So folks can make a really informed decision about a pretty significant career choice, right? Training for the uniform members is quite some time. You're going to spend some time in Aurelia at the academy. You're going to go off to OPC and spend quite a bit of time there, and then you're going to come back to the academy and train. So right out of the gate, you're talking about months worth of training. So maybe you want to have a really eyes wide open look at what the job looks like before you get there. And we have that. So I have had a number of members, auxiliary members and colleagues, people that were in my graduating class from the auxiliary program who have moved on. And there's nothing that gives you more pride than seeing somebody who got on the auxiliary program, volunteered some time, and realized this is the life for me. It's really a lifestyle and a choice, and seeing them progress and move on. The beauty about being involved in the auxiliary program is if you have that in the back of your mind and you make that decision, but you're not quite at your competitive best yet to apply for the uniform side, maybe there's a few things in your wheel of assessment that you need to work on. The beauty is you're developing relationships with regular uniform members, and you can ask them, hey, I need some help with this. How can I get better in this aspect? How can I get better in that aspect? So you can work on that as an auxiliary member, perfecting your application for the uniform side. So when you finally do feel you're ready to submit and you're at your competitive best, you know that there's some people that have really helped you along the way and informed your decision and your training. So it's a really great program for that.
Matthew, that was awesome. I think you answered that really, really well. And I just want to touch on that too. Yes, some people use it as a stepping stone, but like someone like yourself, also, you have a career of your own that you have outside of this. So I also don't want to depict it in the sense that this is used as a stepping stone for uniform. Whereas a lot of people, I think, within our organization, especially in the auxiliary program, they do this apart from a career that they're happy with on the side, that they're totally content with. And this is something that they do for other reasons. Maybe you can elaborate on that, because that kind of touches into where you stand in that situation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm very fortunate. I work for a really outstanding employer. I have a great position with Kingston Health Sciences Center as part of my regular job. I've got a great team of colleagues that I work with, and I get to collaborate every day. So making a move from my existing position and my existing career doesn't necessarily make the most sense to me. Although I really have an affinity for this, and I really believe in the sort of the mission of the OPP and the members and making our communities better for everybody. It's not a jump that I want to make. And there's definitely a need for us to A, support folks who want to move on, and B, that sort of training ground or that stepping stone for people who do want to move on. But we definitely need members who are also invested in a longer term. Someone like me who realizes that I can still contribute and be a part of the Ontario Provincial Police, but that I don't necessarily need to take a uniform role or have to move on at some stage of this journey to stay with the OPP and continue to contribute. You can still have your full-time career and your family life and all your other hobbies and things that you like to spend your time with. This can just be in addition to that. And I would offer and suggest that it's an enhancement. There's lots of the relationships that I've developed just by knowing and working with some of the people in the OPP has just been outstanding. And this early stage in my journey with the OPP, only 3 years in, I imagine some of these folks are friends that I'll have for the rest of my life. So, there's no need to have to move on. You can be an auxiliary, and you can be an auxiliary for a long time. We have members who have 25 and 30 years of volunteering experience. And we need folks like that who are willing to be sort of the roots of the program and in the community, and they're there just to contribute in a volunteer role.
Yeah, and I think there's another question here about, have years of customer service experience, but not much recent volunteer experience. How important is it? How important is volunteering prior to applying? And I think this person is specifically asking about the uniform position, applying to the uniform position. And certainly, one of the 10 areas of assessment for the uniform position is volunteering. And, maybe Matthew, you can talk about that, how that could be, achieved by going through the auxiliary program, and then that could be used as a way to transfer over when you're applying to the constable stream, and how that could benefit you. Maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So great question. And absolutely, this is one of the ways that you can affect a number of different areas of assessment, right? So the volunteering obviously is one. That's an easy one to check off. You can say, yeah, I've done at least 180 hours of community service over the past year. But then you can speak to how that's helped you better prepare for your constable application, right? That you've got some different skills that you've learned related to de-escalation, and how that's going to be really important when you move on to your role as uniform constable or something like that. So you can get your volunteer hours and help enhance that area of your assessment, but there are also other aspects in there that you'll get an opportunity to improve on. So this is really great for that. One of the things we tell people though is, especially in terms of knowing that people want to move on to the uniform side, this can't be your only opportunity for volunteering, right? So it's really great to utilize this in terms of your volunteer hours, but can you speak to other ways that you're investing in making your community better from a volunteer perspective? So try to think about that, and maybe that means that you're doing OPP auxiliary, but maybe you're helping out somewhere else in your community as well. That sort of diversification, I think, is really beneficial.
And looking at detachment, so obviously when you go through the auxiliary program, you are selecting also where you are going to be doing this program, where you're going to be working out of. So maybe if you can touch on like how you made your decision. And I think across the province, candidates have a plethora of detachments to choose from depending on where they want to go. So maybe if you can touch on that, because I know that's a question we always get about how, where to go, or am I going to get the place that I want? So based on your experience, Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, great question, and it's a common one that we get. So where am I going to end up, right? So the auxiliary program, we do have units based across the entire province in all 5 regions. And there's definitely opportunity. So we're light in a lot of our units, and we're actively looking for members to join us. And just like on the uniform side, you get to place at least or at most 6 options of units that you might like to work with. And for most people, they post ones that are closest to where they live, obviously making it a bit easier to get to and participate. And the interesting thing with the OPP is once you're on as an auxiliary member, and you've passed your 9-month probation period and you've been signed off, once you've passed that, you're actually eligible to work anywhere in the province. So I'll use myself as an example. I'm based here in the East region. My home unit is Frontenac. Again, I'm on a temporary assignment to Orillia, so I do spend some time in Central Region in Orillia working with the team there. But I also have family that lives in Northern Ontario. And it just so happens that my family knows somebody who's an OPP officer. I met them. I had the opportunity to speak with them. And they said to me, "You're an auxiliary member?" Yes, I am. "Bring your stuff with you the next time you come." So I did, and I got to do a couple of patrol shifts in Northern Ontario and experience the OPP in an entirely different perspective than I had down south here. So the really unique thing is, especially if you're a student, we get this a lot, or if you're somebody that's maybe at the end of your sort of professional career and you're thinking
Right.
about moving, it's transferable. So you can be at one unit and then you have to move for your job or for your school or whatever, and you can transfer to another local unit and continue to contribute in that area. You don't have to worry about, well, I'm based in one area and that's only where I have to work, or I have to sort of start over or something like that. The opportunities to work across the province are endless.
That's an amazing point, Matthew, because you're right. So somebody like yourself that has a profession that you're doing outside of the organization, you're absolutely right. Anywhere you go, whether if you take on any sort of other opportunities, you can essentially go and transfer to the local detachment that will be in your place of work. So that is actually amazing. I'm glad you touched on that. And just to add to that, the next 3 classes that we will be having in 2026 are scheduled for February, June, and September. So if you're able to get your applications in, certainly you'll be competing for one of the ones that come up. So I would say, go on the website opp.ca/careers, look at the minimum requirements, and certainly if you're eligible, whether it's a situation like Matthew where he's happy in the role that he does outside of this organization, but gets something different in your day-to-day experience from this role, or if you're someone that's looking to use this role as a stepping stone for the constable position and your other policing aspirations, I would say it's a benefit on both sides there. So certainly look into that. And Matthew, it looks like you got a lot of fans here that are supporting you with love here, saying that great, Matt, doing well, love it. So hopefully, clearly you're making an impression from all the information you're giving out here. So that's great. So a quick recap, Matthew, we're getting towards the end of the hour here since we hopped on initially. If you can just recap, I know we've had some new people join. If we can just recap real quick the minimum qualifications for the auxiliary application process. Certainly, if you want to apply, you would go to opp.ca/careers. You would go through the hiring portal where you would have to make a portfolio, essentially create a login credential, and then you would go through the portal to submit all the information. There is no paper applications that we do at this point anymore, so it's all done through the portal. But again, it's a very user-friendly program that you're able to attach everything. But Matthew, maybe if you want to recap just the minimum qualifications for us for the auxiliary program.
Yeah, absolutely. So minimum requirements. So you need to be at least 18 years of age. You need to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. You need to hold an Ontario secondary school diploma or equivalent. You can also have your college or university. Those are great additions, obviously, to your application. Obviously, you need to have a G-class driver's license with full privileges and no more than 6 demerit points.
Yep.
No criminal record. And you need to have the ability to pass a handful of different tests. So your medical tests, your security background tests, your financial assessment, and your character background assessment. So those are sort of the key things that we look at in terms of your minimum qualifications. And we no longer have a minimum qualification or prerequisite for first aid. You used to have to have that before you applied, but we no longer have that. We're going to spend 2 days when you come to recruit class teaching you about emergency first aid and those kinds of things. So you're going to get that delivered to you once you get on with the program.
Thanks for that, Matt. And one of the questions here: what if I were charged but received a peace bond on record? Would that charge, work against me or on my application? So if you had any sort of convictions or charges, as long as you've received a pardon for it, we would still accept your application, review it, and look at your overall competitiveness to be hired for that position. So what I would recommend is you submit the application, go through the process, because that is the only official way you would know if you are meeting the requirement. Once you put all your documentations together, and if we need any sort of clarity, we would come back to you and ask you to provide further documentation or explanations based on what has happened. So hopefully that answers your questions there, Enrique. I would love to join the OPP. How do I start? Best police service in the country. I would love to be watching the highway. So maybe just like what Matthew said, you start off with the auxiliary program to get the experience that you need to understand what the organization is all about, what the profession is all about. Because Matthew touched on how you can go on ride-alongs to get that experience, to understand what an officer does on a day-to-day basis. Because in the auxiliary program, you can do that. You can actually go for shifts, day shifts and night shifts, to see what sort of calls and things that an officer responds to. And if you feel like this is the profession for you, then certainly you can take that next step to submit the application for the constable process. And also, I'll recap exactly what the application process looks like, which Matthew touched on earlier. Go on our website, opp.ca/careers. Go to the auxiliary side of it to create your login on the portal. Ensure that you meet the minimum requirements, the eligibility criteria. Once your application is put into the portal, submit the application. That's when we would receive it on our end. We would then pre-screen your application, make sure all your eligible requirements are met. And if you are deemed competitive, you would move on to the interview portion where, who knows, you might come in front of me. I might be your interviewing officer as a recruiter. So it's a one-on-one virtual interview that you would be conducting. And then if you are successful at that, you would be moving on to the psychological and background investigation, where we assess your medical assessment, security inquiries, financial checks, and your employment character and reference checks. And if everything goes well, Matthew, how did you get your call? Where were you and what happened? How did you react when you got that call?
I wasn't sure if you were going to ask me. So my application process was towards the end of COVID. Okay. This isn't the standard process, but my application had been with the program office and through various stages for the better part of 2 years.
Right. There was a lot of delays during that time. Yeah.
There were a lot of delays and there was a lot of back and forth, and that's fine. I think one of the most important characteristics you can demonstrate is your ability to stick with it, right? That's a really important thing. So I did, and my application, I understood, was with a background investigator, and I was told at that time, like, we'll call you. Don't call us. We'll call you. And I had been waiting probably for a few months. And my poor colleague that I talked about earlier, who is now a uniform member, who I rode with, who inspired me to join the auxiliary, I used to call and text him regularly. So I don't know, he might be out there listening or watching, and I don't know if he is or not, but I know I drove him nuts for sure, because I was saying, when am I going to hear? When am I going to hear? When am I going to hear? Right. So ironically, I went away on vacation for a week. I was away with my family on vacation, and woke up one morning and opened my email, and bing, there was an email there from the program office. And I remember jumping up and down and being very excited that I was finally going to get on. And of course, had to reply and submit a bunch of information to accept the role with the OPP Auxiliary. And I was on vacation. So I had to call the program office desperately and say, like, I'll send this, I promise. Don't give up my spot. I'll send it as soon as I'm home. So I was able to get classed up, and I ended up joining the class in April of 23. And it was, I can legitimately say it's one of the best experiences of my life. That class, that opportunity, the chance to come to GHQ and learn and train was just phenomenal. I mean, the opportunity to get to learn from some of the best people in law enforcement who are teaching our uniform members teach us. Right. So when you go for DT training, you're getting defensive tactics training from the people who are teaching our frontline officers, and they're teaching us, because, officer safety is very important. So, you won't have those opportunities to learn some of these skills and these techniques and collect some of this knowledge from a better place. There's no better place for you to learn and develop.
That's amazing. And there was a question here about the fitness. I know Matthew covered it earlier. Compared to the constable stream, there is no fitness testing for the auxiliary stream as you're going through the application. But when you do go for your training in Aurelia at the general headquarters, I believe you're given the opportunity to compete in the fitness pin. Can you talk about that a little bit, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're quite right. There's no sort of fitness testing requirement. Obviously, you need to be fit for duty, is what we call it, right? So you need to be able to, perform all your duties. But there's no prerequisite or testing that you need to pass from a physical standpoint. Right. But you're right. You do get the opportunity to compete for your PIN when you're at recruit training for the 8 days in Aurelia. And we actually recently shifted it. So now it's one of the first things that you do when you arrive. So you get there, you check in, you get your orientation from one of the auxiliary superintendents to help set the stage. And then you go get changed and you go outside with all these folks who you don't know. and it's a really great character building opportunity. And camaraderie, it builds camaraderie right away, because you recognize that you and your classmates, you want them to achieve too. You're there, you're not competing with them. They're your classmates and they're your colleagues, and you want them to do well. So right away, everyone's cheering you on and everyone wants to see you achieve and get your pin. Some people are apprehensive, and I wouldn't call it peer pressure. I would call it like positive encouragement. Other folks are saying, look, you can do this. I did it. You can do it. Like, let's go. We'll do it with you. We'll cheer you on. So it's a really great opportunity. And then you get to wear your pin afterwards when you've achieved your marks.
Have you had your chance to do your pin in the recent years, or what?
I haven't been there on the first day, so I keep missing the opportunity, but I can't wait for my first opportunity to go and get it so I can pin mine on my best.
Me and you, we might have to set up a day where I can come and test you on it, Matthew. I'd be more than happy to do the testing for you.
I'd love to have it. We should do it, and we should send it out to everyone so they can see, like, even if you're an older guy like me and you're on the auxiliary, you can still get your pin.
Well, since you dropped the older guy remark there, I got a question here. Is there an age limit? I'm 50 and I want to be an auxiliary. What do you say to that?
I say get your application in. So there's no age limit. We have a number of people who are later on in their life, in their career, and I can definitely say that probably some of the experience that you have through your career, your family life, whatever, probably enhances your experience as an auxiliary member. And there's no age limit. So get your documentation and your application in good order and get it submitted, because we're looking for people and there's no age requirement at all.
No, that's awesome. Thank you, Matthew. And then Julie here sent a remark. Thank you both for all your work and for all the information you provided today. Enrique saying thanks for the advice. So clearly, I think based on the remark, I'd say you knocked this one out of the park today, Matthew. I thought you provided amazing information, very relevant, and certainly it was easy to follow. So for those that are on the call, on the video stream with us today, we got about 5 minutes left. One last one, Matthew. Any parting advice or words or things that you would like to give or share before we wrap up here about the program, or what people can benefit from, and maybe how it changes you, or how it benefits you in your life, no matter what age you are, what stream you are, what career path you work in right now? Anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, appreciate it. So first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to come, spend some time with you, answer some questions, and share information about the program. I'm a true believer in the program and the work that we're doing. I can safely say, and I do tell this to people when I speak to them, this is the most unique and the best volunteer opportunity you will find anywhere in the country. The opportunity to, like I said before, learn, train, work with some really outstanding and amazing people. There's no better volunteer opportunity you will find anywhere else. And then in terms of what you might be able to get from it, so again, there's opportunities to learn and train, but the relationships that you can develop are phenomenal. And a lot of people come with their own sort of perspective. So some people want to use this as an opportunity to become a regular uniformed constable, and that's amazing. Some people want to just come and do community engagement. They really feel strongly and believe in that. For whatever reason, they have a close association with doing fraud prevention education sessions for our elderly, or they want to participate in community engagement sessions, touch a truck sessions, and they maybe don't have a heavy interest in doing patrol work, and that's okay. There's a lot of different ways that you can interact and engage and get out of the program what you want. Which is really unique. It's not like you're committed to, you always have to do this thing all the time, which is really special. And then I guess the one last thing is, you never know when you might inspire somebody else. So I got involved and became an auxiliary member because I had certain aspirations of the ways that I wanted to contribute to the community. And little did I know that I would become a role model. So one of my daughters has decided that seeing me involved in this and seeing some really exceptionally strong women in the law enforcement realm, that she's decided that may be something that interests her down the road. So you never know, the actions that you take, how you might inspire others and have them join our ranks and make our communities a better and safer place for all of us. So I would encourage people to get their information and apply. Come and check us out. Join us. It's a great opportunity.
That's a great wrap up. I love that, but I can't let you go without talking about one last point we talked about before we hopped on the call. So as you know, the Blue Jays are killing it. in the sense that they're making us proud. And I saw the commissioner actually rock something in relation to the Blue Jays hat there. And I know you have something. If you want to pop that up on the screen, show us what you have there, Matthew, and tell us a bit about what that is and where that's from.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, we want it all for sure, right? So the Jays are doing great. I think they're giving LA a good run for their money, which is amazing.
Yes.
And they're representing Canada in only the way that the Blue Jays could. And I had the unique opportunity of being at the first World Series game ever in Canada. I'm obviously going to age and date myself here, but back in 1992 for Game 3, I went to the Skydome with my uncle and got to see the Toronto Blue Jays take on the Atlanta Braves, and it was amazing. A really unique and amazing experience, and it's so cool to see them back there playing in the World Series and competing for the championship trophy. So go Jays, go for sure.
Perfect. On that note, we'll wrap up there. So, Matthew, I just want to thank you. I thought you did an amazing job really sharing the information about the Auxiliary program. And, I think your passion certainly spoke in every single word that you used to describe and articulate this position. So for those of you that are interested in this position, certainly please visit opp.ca/careers and look at the Auxiliary program just to understand what the minimum qualifications are and the requirements are. And certainly if you have any questions, I'm sure Matthew would be more than happy to address some of them. You can reach out to him. He's out of the East Region program there. And certainly if you have any questions, even for myself, please don't hesitate to reach out to me about this program or any other streams that we have for the OPP. And we have one game tonight about the Jays, so hopefully Jays do what they need to do, but we will see them back in Toronto on Friday. So in saying that, we'll wrap up for the day today, and we'll see you at the next AMA session in a few